Welcome into episode 223. Be sure you're following us on Twitter at BaileyJAdams22, at by CA Simmons, at Night Sports Now, and at Pegasus Podcast. You can also email us at Podcast by KSN at gmail.com. Christian, this is weird because I just saw you in person not even 48 hours ago. And
That's
so it's
right.
like now to see you again, but via Zoom is weird.
It's too much, right?
Don't know why. Yeah. I feel like we just talked a bunch for the 3 days I was in Orlando, and it's like, all right, maybe we need a break from each other. But here we are doing a
Yeah, I
podcast.
actually it was a very lovely 3 days, and at the end of it, I was like, maybe we should end the podcast. I feel like Bailey and I have we've exhausted all our topics. I
Yeah.
always forget. It's actually always funny because we've talked about this before, but since particularly because we text all the time, but because we do the podcast like this, I can never remember when I haven't seen you. Like I'll be like, we hung out in person 3 weeks
In
ago, and
Tampa.
you'll be like, no, but I'll just say that randomly. Like I'll
Oh,
be like, oh, we hung out like a few weeks ago, and you'll be like, that was in January. Like I just don't have any frame of reference. But I feel like I've been seeing you a lot lately. I was in Tampa, then you were here. It's football season.
yeah, it
I will
is.
not
I
be
will
seeing
see.
you for the Sam Houston game
You absolutely will not.
now.
I will not be showing up. And that's by design. I couldn't do two. I couldn't make that drive back to back weeks for New Hampshire and Sam Houston. So
I would
it's
usually judge you heavily for that because I find missing a UCF home game repulsive. But I these two games back to back, man. I feel like most fans, if you live out of town, I can't justify driving for both
yeah.
of these. It's like you pay
There
me.
are there are more factors at play too. Like Sunday, the Bucks have their home opener or season opener at home, and I have to be there for that. So it's like, do I want to drive to Orlando for the 6:30 kick against Sam Houston and then drive back that night or in the morning?
If
And
it
no, I
was
don't. That's the answer.
I don't know, for some reason this is instead, I don't know. The BYU game is the second game of the season. Would you have driven?
Oh yeah, I've
That's what
done
I
it
think, right?
before.
Yeah,
Like
yeah. It's
I'll
just
have more. I'll have more this season where I have to be back in Tampa for Sunday, but I just
it's
couldn't just
it's the two fake
because I
games. It's
have
like,
more. Yeah, and it's because I have more of those days. It's like, all right, well, I can skip this one because it's Sam Houston, but
yeah. You
we'll
know who
talk Sam
doesn't
Houston.
think it's a fake game
Oh
though? Apparently Gus Mal's on, but we'll get into
yeah,
that later in the podcast.
yeah. We'll preview. I guess preview. We'll talk Sam Houston a little bit, and then. But before we start there, we'll go back with some of the things we missed from UCF New Hampshire. And we'll start that. I'll throw it over to Christian.
Thanks. I don't know why we're making this such a thing. Bailey sent me over the outline, and the first line is Christian apologizes to Night Nation, which I did not mean it to be that serious, but I can apologize anyway. So as I always do, and I got to do it with you, Bailey, we rewatched the game the day after the game, as is standard, to see what we missed, all that. And I on the post game podcast said that I was unhappy with the crowd, and I just wanted to say that that was a very bad thing to say because not only was it not true, it was arguably stupid as hell because the crowd was fantastic. I don't know, maybe I was just in a bad mood. Maybe I saw KJ whiff on a pass, and I just had to direct my anger somewhere, and I was like, "This crowd sucks." There's like 4 empty seats in front of me, but no, the crowd was excellent. Like the whole game, it looked awesome on the broadcast. Obviously, not in like the fourth quarter, but whatever. And the what's the new lights up, lights down? Is there a name for that yet?
I don't know if there's a name yet.
Okay, we're just gonna call it lights up because I don't think they go down at any point. The lights up looked really cool. A lot of like awesome visuals came out of that game, and I was just reminded of. Okay, so the other reason I was reminded of this is because you asked. We were talking about when UCF back in 2016 very wisely was trying to get like crowd patterns going, like this section where's this color, this section where's that color, and there was one that was the moat, which was the white and black layers. And you asked me, did it look good at all? And I said, don't worry, I took a photo at that game and I'll show it to you, and the photos of an empty stadium. And I'd kind of forgotten
Yeah.
how, as recently as 2016, it was like UCF would be playing games and there just wouldn't be people at the games. Like, I don't mean like it was sparse. I mean, there just aren't people there. And maybe I got a little too over the top for being like, why didn't the cabana fully fill out for this Thursday night FCS game? So I just want to apologize. It was a great crowd. I think it is wonderful that UCF is at the point where they're coming off a 6-win season that fans were mostly angry with, and they were still packing the house for an FCS team. I think that's the biggest indicator of a program making it, other than winning games on the field, is to have big crowds
Yeah.
for other games.
Yeah, and I think it should probably be the same against Sam Houston because I mean it's first Saturday home game of the year, family weekend, all that stuff. I think it'll be another pretty good run.
Family Weekend probably saves it because I think otherwise it might be a little. We'll see.
Well,
We'll see.
because that was the case with Villanova last year, wasn't it? I think Villanova was family weekend, and there was a great crowd for that game. So
Yeah.
and it was the first Saturday home game also. So
Plus, according to Gus Malzahn, this is a top tier opponent. So
yeah, we keep hinting at that until we get to
there's
the
nothing
Sam
to hint at.
Houston
Gus
talk.
was
But
just his presser was an hour ago as we're recording this, and he was just very adamant that Sam Houston looked really good. Well,
I think he was talking about how like the quarterback won a national championship in JUCO, and then the coach. I think he said like the coach has won 3 championships or something. I don't know. He was very complimentary of them, which I would kind of expect him to be, because then when they win by 35, he'll be like, "That's a good team we just beat by 35."
Well, I would say because it's always coach speak. Like no matter who the team is, like they can be playing 0-9 UConn, and the coach is going to be like, "Oh, they got some ball players. We're going to have to bring our A game, whatever." But we're coming off of Gus on his halftime interview going, "Well, we just got stuffed on 4th and 1 by a 1 AA team." So we'll
He
see.
also
But
said in his press conference today, like that's the thing is he usually is like very confident. Like I mean I get it. He's actually speaking in reality, which is nice. But he referred to New Hampshire like he said something like, "Oh yeah, anytime you're playing a lesser opponent like that."
yeah,
And so it's like I mean I don't
did
know.
someone at New Hampshire just piss him off? Because he would never do that. Like we've played FCS teams with him, and it's always, oh, they're really good. They got good guys. And New Hampshire, he was just like awful program. Like just like every chance he gets is like they're lesser than us. They're 1 AA. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Some of the other things we missed. I don't know if we mentioned it or didn't mention it enough on Thursday night, but UCF's lack of penalties was an encouraging sign. They had 3 for 35 yards, which I mean, I don't even think it's a Gus thing. I think Gus teams at UCF have been undisciplined, but I think like Heupel's teams were undisciplined, and I think Frost's
Yeah.
teams got a lot of penalties too. So it's just been a UCF thing for too long. So
I think it's a
hopefully
speed
that's a
thing.
step.
I mean, when you play that fast on offense in particular, it's like you just leave yourself open to more things than the more like old school teams that really take up every second to set their adjustments and everything. But I mean, I was shocked because during the presser today, Gus was asked, did he feel like the team was disciplined? Which is a question that you could ask basically at any point, of the last few years. And he replied, yeah, I think so. Which is like great, but it was just so shocking for me to hear that because I think I actually could have asked that at any point last season, the year before, or the year before that, and we've gotten a very different answer from, yeah, they're doing good.
It was a different feeling too than about 12 hours ago when Brian Kelly of the LSU Tigers said he was angry at his team and just basically threw all of them in front of a moving truck. So
He
that was
at
cool.
Notre Dame, he said he wanted to execute his players. I don't know why this is shocking
That
to
was
anyone.
that was supposed to be a joke that he botched really badly, and I
Very
think it's funny
badly.
every time I see it.
Was it
Um,
Don Shula? Was that the coach who said what he was trying to say?
John McKay said it. Well, I don't know. It's funny. There's like a little lore around it because John McKay was credited as saying it when he was the Bucks head coach in like I think it was 76 or 77 when they first
Okay, maybe
were
that's what I'm thinking of
established.
then.
But there's some things that I've read that's like no, he never said that. But I'm like, how did no one knows? It's like
The
it's
what the
weird.
original quote was he was asked, "What do you think of the team's execution?" And he said, "I'm in favor of it."
Yeah,
And which is funny when you frame it that way.
yeah.
And Brian Kelly tried to do a playoff of that and was just like, "I think our team should be executed," which like came across very differently.
Yeah, so while he thinks that, or he thought that at Notre Dame, and maybe thinks that at LSU now, Gus Malzahn happy with his team's discipline on Thursday night. So I don't know. Hopefully, a step in the right direction, but I could also see them doing okay again against Sam Houston, then going to TCU and having like 8 penalties for 95 yards.
They'll be penalty free in the first half, and then they'll be like all in the fourth quarter, like game on the line situations. Just start committing all kinds of penalties.
Yeah, it'd be great. Next thing we'll talk about Colton Boomer, which he's a popular topic on this podcast. We did say on Thursday that things looked great and was encouraging to see him make his 2 kicks. Watching back on the broadcast on Friday as we did, those 2 kicks were closer to being misses than we thought originally.
Yes.
And he did miss the 39-yarder that didn't count because they called delay a game on him and then it moved back to 44 and he made that one.
Which I'm not sure if Gus knows, because in his presser day, he complimented him on that making that. Like he said, he makes the field goal, then we get the delay of game, and he makes it again.
He did miss it though, right? We saw him miss it.
Okay. We only rewatched the game once. I'm almost certain he missed it, but doesn't matter. Not a real field goal anyway. But yeah, I mean, we came out of that like Colton Boomer is back. No more concerns there. Yeah, I mean, I'm not like anymore. I'm not notably more freaked out about it than I was before we rewatched the game. But it's just, if you've been to a football game at UCF Stadium, which if you're listening to this, I suspect you have, that, and like, unless you're sitting with a head on view of the end zone, it's like you're kind of just, we're looking to the refs to see if they're going to tell us it went in or not. And I did not realize that both of Colton's makes, while they were makes, were like pretty razor thin makes. So now I'm a little more like, okay, we'll like hold off a little bit on the congratulations on being back, Colton Boomer hype. But still, I mean, he made them at the end of the day. He's always kind of been like, even when he was at his peak, he was never like perfectly nailing them. I mean, the Boise State made field goal to win the game. That thing like hooked in at the last second.
Gus was doing
the this thing, so yeah. To our audio listeners, we did the when Gus put his hands on his head. Yeah.
Do you want to mention what he said about Colton Boomer and sports psychology today in the press conference?
Yeah. So Gus was asked about Boomer in the press conference today. Gus said that he is starting to be a bit, this is a quote, starting to be a bit more of a sports psychologist for Boomer. I don't totally know what that means, but it probably just, I don't know. Kicking's weird. Gus gave the analogy of, oh, if you have one bad swing in golf, you can like come apart and everything. And I think it was just in so many words saying, hey, when kickers miss, they crumble. But Gus, I mean, he seemed happy with Boomer. He said that what I thought was interesting because Grant Reddick started taking kickoffs in the second half of that game, and they weren't like the best kickoffs in the world, but they, whatever. And Gus mentioned that last year with Boomer, both kicking field goals and kicking kickoffs, that he felt like maybe they're asking him to do a little too much. And Gus kind of left the door open for if Reddick can show he can do that, they'd like for Boomer to really just focus on field goal kicking. So I thought that was interesting and noteworthy for sure.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, I don't have the ESPN stats pulled up, which are not, they don't have it what I saw on UCF's official stats on Thursday night, but I seem to remember, I think Boomer had like 6 touchbacks on his kickoffs, and I don't know if Reddick had any. So that's probably what he's talking about as far as
Yeah.
if Reddick can prove that he's able to do that.
The Reddick ones
So we'll
weren't
see.
awesome. One landed. It's not a huge deal because like they covered it fine, but it's like one of Reddick's kicks landed at like the 20, and it's like I don't know if you want to see that against some of these Big 12 special teams units. I don't.
No.
That seems like a nice to have if they can get Reddick there, but I don't know if that's totally worth it.
Yeah. The last thing, and this is more of a wider college football week 1 thing, is I don't know. I think we did an okay job. We were freaking out a little bit about KJ on Thursday night, but we did, I think, make a
Not
good
me.
point about everything else looking good. They won 57-3. And then over the course of the weekend, we saw a bunch of other Big 12 teams almost lose, and in Houston's case, lose and never look competitive against UNLV. Um, so yeah, I mean, pretty good week 1 for UCF to not have anything to worry about outside of KJ looking a little shaky.
Yeah, and I want to toe the line carefully on that because I'm not trying to pull the whole see fans who were upset that KJ
Oh
Jefferson looked
no.
incapable of playing quarterback. It could have been worse. It just more put things in perspective a bit because it is sometimes I find it silly. Like it's hard to explain, especially to like a non-diehard fan of like my team just won 57-3 and I'm not feeling great. Like that's just such a strange sentence to say, but it did put in perspective a little bit. I mean, just through it, Colorado struggled with North Dakota State. There's no shame in that. North Dakota State's a really good team. But
Mhm.
still, Colorado. More interesting in that was like Colorado's O line was getting like handled by an FCS team, North Dakota State or not. Um, Cincinnati is projected to be pretty bad, and they sort of back that up. They struggled for about 3 quarters with Towson before finally putting them away. Iowa State struggled with North Dakota, not North Dakota State, just North Dakota, which is a different thing. Texas Tech went to overtime with Abilene Christian,
Yeah.
which I'm actually not worried about Texas Tech at all there because apparently it's just that's how Texas Tech starts their seasons with shocking performances against teams they're supposed to be much better than. And then there is Houston who hosted UNLV and just got curb stomped on their home field by a Mountain West team. So it's not to say that we shouldn't worry about the things with UCF. It almost in a weird way is going to be bad when KJ doesn't improve, but it almost reinforced to me that maybe UCF really can be a Big 12 contender. And I know I'm going crazy off of one game, but just all the teams that weren't supposed to be Big 12 contenders this year looked like it in their first
Yeah.
games and had wide ranging issues of this unit looks like a problem and this was an issue and penalties. And UCF, it was more like everything looked pretty damn good except KJ. So it could have been worse. And I said it on our last podcast, and I want to reemphasize we should not come away from the New Hampshire game and say, great, we've established there are no issues on this roster. There definitely are. They just didn't show up in game 1 that
Right.
much. And that's good. So I'm
Yeah.
sure we'll learn more on Saturday. I'm sure there will be things that we'll discover, but for now, that was about as good of a debut as you could have hoped of literally everywhere outside the starting quarterback.
Yeah. Another one wasn't Arizona struggling for a little bit, and then I mean they didn't in the end. There was the McMillan, the receiver, had like 300 yards and 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, I
So
went from cool 8-0 in space games to Arizona's gonna kill UCF in like a 1 game swing because Arizona hosted New Mexico, who lost to Montana, either Montana or Montana State last week. And it was rough early on. It was at halftime or close to halftime. It was a 17-14 game. And I'm like, oh man. And then Arizona just decided, New Mexico scored 39 points, let's be real. But in the second half, Arizona just decided, what if we remembered that we have 2 of the best offensive players in the Big 12 and just let them cook? And they scored
yep.
61 points. Noah Fafita had 4 touchdowns and 422 yards. I don't know how to say the receiver's name, but
Yeah.
McMillan is his last name, and he had 10 catches for 304 yards and 4 touchdowns. So that's not really what you want to see. Because where my brain went with that was it went Arizona's offense is really good. The space game will be a shootout. Oh wait, we don't have a quarterback. Like that was the process of events in my brain where I was like, okay, I'm not worried about the space game again. So we'll see. But that's like us 2 months from now's problem. We don't have to worry about that right now.
Yeah, we'll worry about that later. What we'll worry about now is Sam Houston, I guess. I don't know if worry is the right word, but we'll shift our attention to Sam Houston. And I think the natural place to start with this is what do we need to see from KJ Jefferson this week to kind of get everybody off of the cliff? And I don't really know the answer to that.
Did you, after we rewatched the game, did you feel better about KJ, worse about KJ, or the same about KJ?
I think the same.
I think I might have felt like a smidge better, like just a tiny little bit. Like, I don't know. Because there were some plays like, I know, I feel like you vaguely disagree with me on this, but like the pass to Kobe, the end zone, like should have been a touchdown. That just sort of went through Kobe's hands.
Yeah. After I saw it again, I realized that I think he was credited with a drop, I'm pretty sure, right?
Yeah. And so it's like, I don't know, it's little things like that where I'm like, if he had just hit that play and everything else is exactly the same, are we a little more calm right now? Like, I feel like it was just the combination of A, the struggling on the throws, and B, that all the touchdowns just came off of short passes to running backs. Like, I feel like if we just see like one receiver touchdown from him, it would have really changed things a little bit. But I don't know. I'm having a hard time getting as worked up as everyone else is still. And all I really want to see from Sam Houston is just don't do that again. I don't think he needs to go out there and we need to see 6 total touchdowns from KJ or he's just lighting it up. I don't think UCF needs to change their game plan here and be like, the goal of this game is to like get KJ chucking it through the air. I just don't look ineffective. That's really the bar for me for this game.
Yeah, I just would like to see him hit the easy passes, honestly. I don't think he was really doing that against New Hampshire. And when you look at the numbers, like that's what he had, that one long one, the 46-yarder to Kobe. Like that was a great throw and it was a great catch. It was a tough throw. Like it was one of the harder throws he had to make, and he made it. But you look at the rest of them, like the dump offs to the running backs. Like he was making the short ones to the running backs, but there was nothing else from the receivers. Like you'd like to see some of the shorter and intermediate throws kind of be there and have him hit those. But yeah, I mean, like I just don't want to see him go 50% again and have one of the worst picks I've ever seen and have that weird fumble moment where he did recover it. But like he looked coming away from it, like everybody nationally was like, oh wow, KJ Jefferson, what the heck was that? Like I don't want to see that again.
Yeah, it's not good when you're playing an FCS team and your quarterback starts making national headlines for bad reasons. Like people were taking note of how badly KJ was playing. But peeling back the curtain a little bit, I was laughing because at the time we recorded our post-game pod, you had not seen the interception because you were down getting a drink or something.
Yeah.
When that happened.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed getting to see you see that for the first time in real time because it is a terrible interception. Like it is so bad.
Yeah. And like it was one of those where I think we watched it 2 or 3 times and I was like, I don't really know like what happened. Like, what did he do? Like, what was he doing?
We tried to figure it out. I'm like I said, I think he meant to like I mean he wanted to get it Townsend. It's the only receiver in the area. I don't know if he thought that he was gonna like put a little touch on it and lob it over and then he just didn't. I don't know.
I think honestly more than anything it was just like it was like not even really a mechanical thing. It was more just like that wasn't what I meant to do. Like it was pretty much there. Like, the play was there. Although actually that was the same one that we were talking about, right? Where Townsend was open for a good like few seconds before he decided to throw it, wasn't it?
No, that was in
that a different one?
There was an end zone play where I don't recall how the play ended. Oh, this is when KJ ended up just throwing it into the dirt in the end zone. This was earlier in the game. And on the replay, Townsend was open for a while, like probably a good 3-4 seconds.
I think there were 2 of those because I'm thinking I think it was the interception too. I'm pretty sure that somebody broke open on the interception because we watched it from his point of view and we're like, throw it now, throw it now, throw it now.
Okay.
And then
we did rewatch a separate play several times. That was that end zone play from earlier in the game. So that, again, there were concerns. It's concerning.
Yeah.
I just
QBR is not a great stat, but 7.5 QBR is making me laugh.
See, that means nothing. I just ignore QBR.
It's just funny though.
Yeah, he needs to. I mean, I said it on the postgame podcast, and I think I'll stick with this. Is that say that the Sam Houston game comes out like it's a video game dropping. Say we go to the Sam Houston game and he, looks exactly the same. It's the exact same problems. Wide open guys he's missing. Throws a pick, just looks ineffective. Yeah, I'll panic. Like we'll get on the postgame pod and I'll say, never mind, this is a problem. But I'm just kind of skeptical that against 2 teams that have significantly less talent than UCF, he's going to do that twice. And I also don't really necessarily know, for me just saying that I'm going to panic, I don't really know what he's going to do against Sam Houston that's going to inform TCU anyway. It kind of just feels like it's going to be a different season when they get to the Big 12 slate anyway. So like I just
Yeah.
don't know. It's hard to I'm trying not to overreact in one direction or the other because it's hard to figure out where things are going to land. But he's got to improve. But I just don't think that the season hinges on him being a star.
Right. And I think that's like the official stance of his podcast at this point. Like we talked about it in the post game, was like he doesn't have to be the best quarterback in the conference or in the country for UCF to be really good. I mean, we saw their run game. He just needs to be good enough to where he's not going to hinder the run game,
Exactly.
which it's not a high bar,
No,
but
it's not.
he didn't really hit the high
he
bar on Thursday.
You're right, because I was about to agree with you. You're right, it's not a high bar. And then right as you're saying it, in my head, I'm like, that's a bar he did not hit against New Hampshire. But yeah, because I mean, really, that's all it is now. Is just is be enough of a threat to throw the ball that they can't just focus on the run game. Like just open things up for the run game. And that's kind of it. That's all you really need to do. And he's also the one thing that he did show he was good at against New Hampshire is that in his own right, he was a good runner on his own. He had several good runs. He was also a good improviser. There were a couple plays where things broke down. He turned it into something. And just having that sprinkled in with just completing some basic throws, getting it to a receiver when they are wide open, that's the bar for. And again, now we will get on after Sam Houston and be like, wow, it turns out the D tackles suck. Who knew? We just didn't know against New Hampshire. I'm not predicting that. I'm just saying as an example, like we'll find more problems. I don't think the team's perfect, but it's just very hard when you see an offensive line that appears to have come together well, this group of running backs that appear to have come together well. And Gus was talking about them again at the presser and how one of his main takeaways is just how he referred to as the luxury they have that they are basically going to always be able to put a fresh running back out there who's really good. Like there is like at whatever team plays UCF this year, from the first snap of the game to the last snap of the game, they're going to face a very good UCF running back who is not tired. And that should terrify you if you're an opposing defense. So it's just all KJ needs to do is not be so bad that is just, that's it every single game is they can't do anything. And I just kind of have a hard time believing that a performance that bad against New Hampshire is somehow going to become the standard. I could be wrong, but I have a hard time envisioning that.
I mean, I'll say it again. I said it on Thursday night. Like he's never looked that bad. I don't think. Like it's never been this bad. That might have been his worst game.
Yeah, honestly.
I mean, maybe not. I mean, statistically, it was pretty bad. But like maybe he had worse games at Arkansas against better teams. But for that to be his stat line against New Hampshire, probably one of his worst performances. But he's never looked like at a baseline that bad. And now that you said that about the running backs, I can't remember doing that thing again where I can't remember if it's something you and I talked about or if it's a conversation I had with someone else. It might have been with Brian at the game, but I was talking about basically what you just said about how, and what Gus said was, RJ Harvey should be their number one back, right? But
yes,
you can do a thing where maybe he gets, 12, 13, 14 carries in the first half, and that keeps him pretty fresh on its own. But even in the third or fourth quarter, if he's run the ball a bunch and he's a little bit, worn down, you put a fresh Miles Montgomery, a fresh Penny Boone, fresh Johnny Richardson out there, like that's gonna, like, you kind of can see defenses just kind of groaning and being like, come on, like, yeah, okay, we don't have to deal with RJ right now because he's getting a break, but we've got to deal with these really, really good running backs who are also problems. So yeah, it is a luxury, and it's one of those things that I don't really know how it happened. I still, like, I guess all of it was kind of like different circumstances, right? Like we had, like, UCF had RJ and Johnny, but but they added Miles Montgomery in the portal, and then the whole Penny Boone situation with, was it Louisville?
Yeah.
And so like that kind of was a break in UCF's favor, but to have all four, who I think all four could be starters in some capacity at other programs, that's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, you just said it, all four of them can start other programs. And what's extra exciting too is Miles has a year of eligibility left, and which you never know in the portal era. Tommy Castellano said I'm a knight and hit the portal 2 days later one time, so like anything can happen. But he was talking about the presser how he's excited to grow in the next couple of years. I think Penny Boone might have eligibility left too. That one's like a little up in the air still.
Yeah.
But like this is beyond this season too. It's like that's what's great about this room is it's not just they all cash in on this season. It was just a weird fortuitous number of events that took place where we're all expecting Johnny to transfer. He doesn't for some reason. They land Miles Montgomery, who could have gone to a lot of places and agreed to back up one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Then they get Penny Boone because he had some portal issues and there were just a limited number of schools that could get him in. It was just a really unusual number of situations that allowed that. Before we get too far away of it, while you were talking, I did look it up. I did a quick look, so apologies if I'm wrong, but as far as I can tell, the last time KJ Jefferson completed 50% of his passes or fewer was September 25th of 2021 against Texas A&M when he completed 7 of 15 passes for 212 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I think that was actually New Hampshire was actually literally his worst passing performance of his starting career, it appears. So like I'm not expecting that to be the standard for him going forward. I think it was just I know I said this on the post game pod and I looked a little bit like a prophet because it's continued to show up throughout the weekend. I looked like a prophet. I came up with this take because Gus Malzahn brought it up in his presser. But the whole helmet communication iPads thing is messing up everybody. Like that was a theme throughout the weekend where every team thought that they had that nailed in practice, and they got into games and were like, whoa. So and Gus talked about in the presser today how he's still really trying to figure out how much is too much information. And he felt like they were particularly sort of set up poorly for that because, so the way the helmet comms work is the radio cuts out at when the play clock hits 15 seconds. You can't talk to the quarterback anymore. As Gus pointed out, they never get down to 15 seconds on the play clock. So he can just talk to KJ the entire time before he snaps the ball. And I think Gus was kind of being open about maybe I was doing a little too much there. Like maybe I should just let him be the quarterback and not be like this. So I just think that those things have played a role as well. And I think that once they get into a groove on that, that's going to help too. I mean, it was a very new situation in a lot of ways.
I think it was, and I think, like you said, for it being throughout the whole country, it's like it was really bad for the overs. Like most
Yeah.
games, it felt like there was not a lot of points going for either team. And I think in some cases, like, and I don't know, again, this could have just been game flow, but like Georgia Clemson as an example, like Georgia didn't really score much early. Like even though they controlled that whole game, like they didn't really score. Their offense didn't really get going until late either. So it's like I almost wonder if it's like as the game went on, and maybe Arizona had that kind of same thing where it's like the game's going on. Although that might have just been more of, hey, we've got two really good players. Let's let them do what they do. But I think you saw more scoring as games kind of came down to the wire rather than shootouts the whole way. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a work in progress for everyone, and that includes Gus and KJ. So, I mean, yeah, again, it's the benefit of having Sam Houston come in and after New Hampshire is like you get these two times to kind of like, all right, let's get on the same page and let's figure out all this stuff. And the helmet communication thing, I think, is probably, I mean, it definitely is, and I think they've talked about it plenty. But it's like for as far as us on this podcast, like it's something maybe we overlooked as far as being a huge deal and huge adjustment for this offense.
Yeah. And that's why, like I said, it's the same stuff against Sam Houston. And I do want to clarify too, because I don't want this to come across as we're just blindly being like, AJ will be fine. I don't really envision a reality. I mean, you tell me if you disagree, but I don't buy that we're going to get to midseason and we're laughing about this and being like, wow, he had it so wrong. Like he should win. He should be all Big 12 second team or all Big 12 first team. I don't see that coming because we also talked about too that it was getting a little weird how there just wasn't much hype coming out from him after fall camp. Like there wasn't a lot of buzz, and there wasn't negative buzz, but there just wasn't like, wow, he's looking awesome. Like we love him. And I that's when we first started a little antsy. And then so that performance. So I don't want this to come across as we're like, we still think KJ is going to be elite. I just don't think that he's going to be so bad that the story of this season is going to be KJ loses them games over and over. I just don't see that coming.
Yeah, I'm not sure. And I think the next like thing we can talk about here is, and we mentioned it and how Gus talked about them, but also like Sam Houston, obviously a newer FBS team, but will be a stiffer test than New Hampshire. They just played Rice this past weekend and beat them. I think it was 34-14.
Yep. The
At Rice.
quarterback
Not
had
that
a
Rice
good
is
game.
not that Rice is a tough home atmosphere, but they won by 20 on the road against a team that went to a bowl last year. So yeah, I mean, I think it'll be a little bit of a more of a test, but I think it's again another good tune-up before going on the road to TCU. So like I think it'll be good to kind of get maybe a little bit more resistance than they got against New Hampshire, but I think there's still plenty of opportunities for them to iron things out and get another win, get to 2-0, and then head to TCU for their first like real test of the year.
Yeah, and I do really want to get ahead of a potential UCF Twitter freakout. I feel like I have perhaps set our audience up for this particularly poorly by referring to these as fake games the whole way through. But Sam Houston's not an FCS team. And even when they were at the FCS level, they were like, they won the national championship in FCS a few years ago. Like they're closer to North Dakota State than New Hampshire, even when they were FCS. Now they've had a couple years to recruit FBS level players. They have a quarterback who's pretty good. This isn't going to be another game where UCF goes and wins 57-3. The last time I said all this to you was before the Kent State game last year, and I said it won't be that big of a score, and then they killed Kent State. But Kent State ended up being like one of the worst FBS teams out there, and I don't think Sam Houston is that. Gus said in his presser today that after watching their game and their quarterback, he feels like they might win their conference, and they might. I mean, they really might. It's the worst conference in college football, but it's or in FBS football, but it's still a conference. And I just hope fans. What I want to get ahead of is when the final score of that game is like 38-13. Let's not go on Twitter and be like, "Wow, the season is doomed." It's just like, it's not another FCS game. They're going to win it. It shouldn't really be competitive at any point, but it's not. I don't think it's going to be one of those games where they just A, score at will, and B, the defense prevents them from putting up a point. It's just not that type of game.
Yeah. And I think that'll be fine. Hopefully, I don't know. There's always a tendency where, you can say as much as you want that we want to get ahead of a UCF Twitter freak out, but there will be one anyway about something. So I don't know. That might fall on deaf ears just because that's what I think. Not only that's what this fan base does, that's what every fan base does. Every fan base across America right now pretty much is probably has something that they're griping about. But no, I mean, it's a good chance. And really, I'm starting to get, it's bad, but like, I'm starting to just really worry about the TCU game more than I'm even like thinking about this week. It's like that because TCU, they beat Stanford on Friday night. Their offense, I thought, and the game was closer than I thought it was going to be, but I think their offense looked really good. They got a good quarterback. So it'll be a different thing. Like you said earlier, it'll be a different season once they get into the Big 12 play. And that's coming next week. So yeah, it'll be nice to kind of get another one out there and get out of the way and get to next week, hopefully with some things clearer at the quarterback position and feeling just overall okay about the fact that their big tough test is, week 3 conference at TCU and then it'll get tougher after that. So
Not to jump ahead and preview the TCU game because we have time to do that, for the next like 2 podcasts after this one. But we watched, I think we missed just the first quarter of the TCU Stanford game. We watched 3 quarters of that, stayed up till like 2 a.m, and it ended. And I'm like, I don't really have any idea what to make of TCU after watching that. Like, I don't feel any better or worse about that game. Their quarterback looked good. They looked undisciplined as hell. I don't know. I feel like you might be more worried about that one than I am. But that might just be, I don't know. And it's not that I'm not worried about it. It's just, I don't know. We'll see. I just am not viewing that as like a game that I'm really freaked out for.
It's more so the fact that it's the first road game, Big 12 road game, probably will be a tough environment. And Gus teams at UCF on the road haven't always performed great. So I don't know. We'll see. Again, like for them, I think we probably learned all that we're going to be able to learn about TCU in that Stanford game because this week they play LIU. I'm not even sure really who that is. So yeah, they play LIU this week. So yeah, I don't know. I think whatever we can gather from TCU before UCF plays them next week, I think that's already happened. So
we're in that phase. We're in that phase of the start of the season where we've now seen everyone play one game and we think we can learn. We can't learn anything. Like we're saying, what do we learn or what do we take away? It's like college football is so weird because it's such a short season. Like 12 games is no teams ever. This is going to sound, it might be a little different in the playoff era now that there are going to be teams playing like 16, 17 games, but no one ever really becomes anything. Like I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. Like 12 games is not always enough time to actually form a full identity. And those that do are typically forming it in the final few games of the season. Like teams just vary wildly week to week. 18 to 22-year-olds or 27-year-olds, if we're talking about that one Miami player, just don't play always consistently. Exactly. So like, it's so funny to sit here after one weekend and I'm like, yeah, UCF is perfect everywhere, but quarterback, Florida sucks. UCF's going to win that by 50. The Big 12 has some shaky teams. Like, it's just all of it is. Then next week it's going to happen. All this other stuff will happen and we'll be like, oh, wait, we know nothing. That's just going to be the season. But I don't know. I don't like that they're opening on the road at TCU, but I also just seeing how much, particularly this helmet comm stuff and I keep saying helmet comms, it's the iPads too. That's been a big thing as well.
Yeah.
That Gus has talked about that and other coaches have talked about that. If it's not having the information is great, figuring out how to dispense that information in a meaningful way during games has ended up to be like quite a learning curve. And Gus talked about that now that he's seen it for a game. He's realizing he thinks it's going to help defenses a lot more than offenses because defenses like can have more real-time information on what to predict and things like that versus where offenses, it might not be quite the same. But at least UCF is getting these 2 games when a lot of other teams are having to play, very serious, like Miami and Florida. That sucks for them that they both had to play a game that is like determining the mood of their season, and UCF just kind of gets to warm up a few times before going on the road. So it'll be interesting, but I don't know. I for Sam Houston, it's like is there anything you're really looking for outside of KJ that you're really like, I really want to see this against that team?
No.
Okay.
Like not really. It's maybe more so on the defensive side of the ball. Like, can they look as good? I'm not there. They're going to look as good and going to give up 3 points, but is it going to be that much of an improvement? You know what I mean? Like, are we going to see a very, very good defense out there? And again, not that I'm going to take much away from both of those games, but if they can do something similar like that and the secondary looks as good as they did, or in that same realm, like I'll be like, all right, cool. Like I feel good about the improvements they've made on defense, the transfers they've brought in, some of the performances there. But outside of KJ, really, there's nothing I'm going into this game like, oh, I need to see this. I don't know.
Well,
Not
it's
really.
actually on the defense that's interesting because, Sam Houston's quarterback is good. He's a good
Mm-hmm.
quarterback and he's a mobile quarterback. He throws the ball well, he runs the ball well. And that is kind of like, I think I like that we're going to see them go up against a good quarterback in this game because that will be an interesting test for the defense, particularly just given how many dynamic quarterbacks there are in this conference that they're going to face throughout league play. And I'm not being like, this guy is a great test before they face Shooter Sanders. Like, I'm not saying he's on that
Yeah.
level. I'm just saying that I'm interested to see them face off against that style of quarterback and see if they still come away looking as locked down as they did against New Hampshire or close to it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's a great point because I mean the quarterback they saw against New Hampshire, like he didn't really have much of a chance, to be honest. And actually, one thing I did probably go a little too hard on. I don't think I went that hard on it, but I said some stuff about the pressure, lack of pressure that they were getting on Thursday, and like Gus kind of we rewatched it, and that confirmed what I had maybe said. I was like, maybe they were getting the ball out quick. They were, and Gus said that again today. He's like, I think we did a good job, and that's the thing that was when he made the comment about playing a lesser opponent. So whenever you play a lesser opponent like that, they're going to try to get the ball out and all that, and they were. So I mean, the quarterback's average for the game was 3.4 yards. So like they were getting the ball out quick and short, trying to get short passes out, and UCF was doing a good job against it. So
Yeah, I feel like we fall into
I
that
mean,
trap. I feel like we fall into that trap every year of like after the first game against an FCS team or a G5, we're like, wow, they really didn't get a lot of pressure. Or like, wow, where were the sacks? And
yeah,
then 3 games later, it's fine, and we're like, oh, okay.
yeah. So yeah, I'm not really worried about that right now. So that's good. Anything else? I mean, I feel like this is a quick podcast, a quick Sam Houston preview. But again, we talked about it last week on the preview for New Hampshire. It was like, what are we going to talk about over these next,
Yeah,
post
well,
game, next preview, and
it's good.
anything else?
Well, that's actually not good. I was gonna say it's good that KJ played poorly. It's not. It's actually quite bad. But I'd said I think 3 or 4 times through this offseason, I was like, what the hell are we going to talk about on that Sam Houston postgame pod? Like, why even do it? What is there to talk about? And then we're watching New Hampshire and KJ's looking terrible. And I'm like, storyline for the next 2 weeks. So there will be things to talk about. But no, I don't really have anything else crazy. I mean, I don't think that I don't think it's a game they can lose. We're going to knock on wood just in case. It would be very funny if I call this a fake game all offseason and they did lose it. But I just hope fans are ready for a score that isn't, it's not going to be 57-3. I think they'll win it easily, but not like it's not going to look insane. And it's weird that to be game 2, and it does really feel like all eyes are on KJ. Like it's just, I feel like the fan base is
Yeah.
going to be living and dying by basically every play of his, which is a weird spot to be in 2 games in the season against no opponents of your level yet. But yeah, I guess Boomer too. Probably keep an eye on him, but I think it's pretty much,
Yeah.
that's where we're at.
Yeah. The funny thing about the KJ thing is like it reminded me of the Darren Ravel tweet. I think it was Darren Ravel. He said, like, I feel bad for our country, but this is great content. Like that's what it was with KJ. It was like feel bad for the state of UCF's fan base, but it's great content for us.
I
So
will say,
yeah,
because
it helped us out.
if you have a podcast of UCF or any sports team, it is genuinely better business for your podcast when there are bad things happening involving the quarterback. Like I can tell you, like peeling back the curtain, like all of our most listened to podcasts are podcasts about some sort of bad quarterback thing. Like Dylan Gabriel gets hurt. John Rice Plumley looks terrible. Mikey Keene starts it. Like it's always like all the like things are going wrong. As a person who has followed UCF my whole life, I really wish they could just figure out quarterback and we could
Yeah.
stop having to talk about this. I did not anticipate this being a season where we were going to have a lot to talk about at quarterback, and I'm not loving that a game and we are back there. So let's hope that after the Sam Houston game, we're just kind of like, oh yeah, he looked great. Anyways, like that would be
Yeah.
awesome if that's where we're at.
I love it, but we'll see. We'll see on Saturday night, 6:30 kick on ESPN Plus for myself and anyone else not going to the game. But I think it will be a good crowd, so that'll be good. We'll jump into the football news, which not a lot. There's just a quick UCF NFL John Rice Plumlee update. He didn't make the Steelers 53-man roster, and rather than sign with the Steelers practice squad, I don't know if that was an option, but he has signed with the Jacksonville Jaguars practice squad, so he will be in the same practice fields in the same locker room as Gabe Davis. That's cool. That's all I have really for football news. So can get right into game of the week, which will be UCF women's soccer, who is 2-0-2. They just beat Georgia on Sunday night 2-0. They're 2-0-2. Their big game this week at Thursday night at 7 at USF. So War on I-4 being renewed there. USF is 3-1-1. So I'll keep one eye on that, probably on my phone while the NFL gets underway on Thursday night. So big game for them. Excited just to have, like, we watched a little bit, or did we watch any of the volleyball game? I think oh no, I pulled it up on my phone as it was ending.
Okay.
That's what
Yeah, I was
happened.
gonna say I did not.
Yeah. But no, just good to see clips back on Twitter, even if we didn't have a chance to watch it, or same thing with men's and women's soccer. So always good to have that back. But with all of that said, tweet of the week.
Not yet.
Not yet.
I want to bring up some about women's soccer that we talked about in real life
Okay.
because I'm baffled by this. Women's soccer just had their senior night. Like
Yeah.
last night. Was that last night? Against Georgia,
Yes.
which they won. Good for them. They took down a top 25 Georgia, and that's awesome. If any of our listeners, because I'm confused on this, have any insight as to why women's soccer is having senior night and I think it's their third home game of the season, if you could like fill us in on that, because I'm very confused. I thought it was we went through this. We thought it was like a typo or a mistake. Then the day rolls around and they're like excited to honor our seniors tonight. And I'm like, but why? I'm very baffled by that and confused. So
didn't you look it up? Didn't they do that last year too?
No, I looked it up and
Oh,
they've
they didn't
never
do
done
that?
this before. I was like, maybe this is
okay.
some soccer thing I'm unfamiliar with, which happens, it's a different sport. And maybe senior night is like the first home game or something. And then I went back like 4 years. It's always been the last home game. I don't know what happened. I don't understand.
I'm curious. So if anyone does have any insight, let us know. That would be helpful. But yeah, tweet of the week.
Tweet of the week. Instead of doing a tweet this week, we're gonna do I don't know what to call this one. In-person stadium fan of the week, something like that. There also wasn't any. I gotta say, we were wondering what the big UCF Twitter fight was gonna be, and really, it just KJ's performance overrun all that. There wasn't really anything dumb. There was definitely some discourse around the lobster roll, which we actually kind of nailed that one because I think we suggested that might come up, and someone did post a photo of it, and from the bottom of my heart, it's the most disgusting looking thing I've ever seen in my life, and I wish I could credit them. I think that person says that it was a 3 out of 10 lobster roll, but it was a 6 out of 10 stadium concession lobster roll, which seems about right. And we should check in and make sure that person's still with us this time next week because that was a shocking decision to eat that. But anyway, we're gonna go to fan of the week. So I think if you've listened to this podcast for any length of time, you would know that I'm a UCF fan because my dad is a UCF fan. My dad went to UCF. I'm a second generation Knight. I grew up watching UCF. My parents go to the games. That's the reason I'm so into UCF. I was very blessed that they got season tickets when I was a very young kid, so I got to grow up going to games at the Citrus Bowl and at the Bounce House. So my parents go to the games. My parents decided to leave at the end of the third quarter when the score was 57-3 and got heckled on their way out of their seats by a group of fans who yelled at them for leaving and told them to go back to their seats. And all I have to say to that is, I have to be, Bailey, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not trying to brag because this isn't something to brag about. I have to be in like the 1% of the 1% of caring about UCF in the world, right? Like it's to unhealthy degrees. It affects my mental health. All of that. If you are at a UCF game and the score is 57-3 against an FCS opponent on a weeknight, and you see someone go to leave, and you not only in your head think, I don't like that they're leaving, but feel so passionate about that you're like, I'm going to yell at them out loud for leaving. You are a bad human being. Like you are actually just a bad person. So I just want to send a message to all UCF fans that like, don't be that, because that's actually horrible. And that's also, which this isn't my parents since they always go to games, but you want to know how to not grow your fan base is get mad at the people who aren't as psychopathic as you are and want to be there to watch like Ja'Cory Brown's handoff at the end of the fourth quarter. That's how you make people feel bad for going to games. And when we're trying to grow as a fan base and get more people to games where everyone's not going to be a diehard, that is a pathetic thing to do. So if for some strange twist of fate, you, the heckler, listen to this, just know that I don't like you and at all and think you're a bad person. And I'm sure they're not listening, but also just don't do that behavior. That's horrible. Don't do that.
Yeah. What's especially funny about it is like your parents missed nothing in the fourth quarter. The final score was 57-3.
Nothing happened.
So they were
crazy how that works.
leaving when they did.
Yeah, I went to have lunch with my parents on Sunday to talk about the game. And it was my dad with tears in his eyes were like, I just can't believe that I missed Kylan Fox's first career reception for 4 yards in the fourth quarter. It's crazy. I can't believe that. I don't know how they'll live with themselves without seeing Jacoby Jones get 2 targets. It's crazy. Who would have thought?
Yeah. What's especially weird and funny is that like everyone left. Like the stadium emptied out by like the early in the fourth quarter. So did they yell at everyone, or they just decide to yell at your parents? I wonder.
I don't know. I will tell you that if I ever find those people, I am going to make sure that those people better for the rest of their lives be in their seat before kickoff and never leave before that alma mater is finished for any UCF game ever, for all the sports. If they're not out at volleyball, if they're not out at women's soccer, if they're not driving to the tennis games, wherever the hell they are off campus, I better find them everywhere. I'm serious. They better be freaking everywhere.
Christian versus the fan who heckled his parents is like the feud of the year now. So
this is a real time thing about how no one will ever get more defensive than when their family is on the line. I'm so annoyed about that. Like my parents just kind of casually like, yeah, no, we got like yelled at. And I'm like, I am so mad at that person. But yeah, so just
I'm gonna find that person.
I'm gonna find that person and make sure that they never leave a UCF game more than a second early. But really, I thought
you were gonna threaten violence on them when you said I'm gonna find.
No, I'm not gonna do
no.
that. Good Lord. But seriously, on the larger point though, we're talking about this is a growing fan base. Don't be that type of fan. We want to be a welcome stadium atmosphere, and we want people to not feel like get people feeling bad about themselves for leaving the game. It's ridiculous. Don't do that.
Yeah, I agree. That's it. We're at the end.
Can I say one more thing really quickly?
Sure.
This coming off last year when I was brutal to you for missing a UCF game. I forget which one you decided to not go to. I think it was Houston.
Villanova. Oh yeah,
Villanova. Houston. No, because Houston it was because I think you missed it for like Thanksgiving, and I was like, that's ridiculous. Yeah. But other than that, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's weird that happened, but hopefully it doesn't happen again. But unfortunately, knowing some of the people in our fan base, it probably will. Hopefully not to your parents, and hopefully not to anyone, but it might. We'll get out of here now. We'll be back on Saturday night with a post-game podcast after the Sam Houston game. That'll be episode 224. Until then, you can find us on Twitter at BaileyJAdams22, at @CA Simmons, at Night Sports Now, and at Pegasus Podcast. Thank you guys so much for being with us, and we will talk to you on Saturday.
Bye, everybody.